Welcome everyone to the big clash of the day between Gukesh, the world champion, and Arjun Erigaisi. Now Gukesh, you can see, is carefully adjusting his pieces. He's had a good start to the Grand Swiss. He managed to beat Etienne Bacro in round 1, drew a winning position with Erdoğan, and there you see Arjun comes in, a handshake, and then he managed to win in the third round against Daniel Yufa without much issues. So 2.5 out of 3. Meanwhile, Arjun Erigaisi started off with a draw against Chigayev Maxim, but then managed to beat Haik Martirosyan and Anton Demchenko. On 2.5 out of 3, these two youngsters, India number 2 and India number 3, and also I think world number 4 and world number 5 are pitted against each other, or world number 5 and 6. So it's going to be a tremendous battle here. I remember both of them played each other when they were just barely 2700 3 years ago at the death match in Hyderabad, and in that matchup it was Arjun who managed to come out on top. What's going to happen today at Norway Chess? Also, they had clashed against each other, and it was Gukesh who managed to turn around a worse position into a win. Handshake, and off we go. Let's see what Gukesh's first move is going to be. He opens with pawn to d4. This is the same opening that Gukesh had played against Yazkan Erdoğan in round number 2. And Arjun goes knight to f6. Gukesh had played the move c3 in that game, like it was d5, c3 there. But today Gukesh is not in any mood for experimentation. He goes c4, pawn to e6. And now pawn to g3, getting the bishop on this long diagonal is the main idea here. And pawn to d5 played here by Arjun. He brings his bishop to g2. And bishop to d6 played here by black. This is actually not the most common move in this position. Bishop e7 and bishop b4 check are much more common, which is the reason why now Gukesh is into a deep thought. He brings his knight out to f3. One of the things is that in these openings, you have to be very well prepared. Like, you should be knowing the little intricacies. Like, for example, is castles good here? Is b3 good here? Is queen c2 good here? These are little nuances which, if you have prepared on the same day or a day before the game, you are able to play. But if you are kind of vaguely remembering your analysis, then you won't really play the most critical line. In that case, you could potentially get in trouble. Knight to d7 played here by black. And now main line here is queen to c2. Gukesh plays it. Arjun, very well prepared at 141, comes back and now plays his pawn to c6. So the big problem for black, of course, is his bishop on c8. Gukesh goes knight d2 and he's angling for the e4 break in the position. If he manages to get that, it would be great, but rook e8 is a classy move, because now if e4 takes e5, and already black is slightly, it's equal. He's equalized. So b3 played by Gukesh. He's trying to get bishop b2 and clamp down on the e5 square when white would be well developed. But Arjun does not even give his opponent one bit of chance. He pushes his pawn to e5. Pawn takes pawn taken here. And now Gukesh gets up. Arjun takes back the pawn. C takes d5. Now pawn takes on e5. Well, the resulting position looks very comfortable for white after bishop b2. Like, you have an isolated pawn to play against. But this is modern chess. In modern chess, you're not afraid of an isolated pawn. you are basically embracing it, and that is what Arjun has done. He goes bishop g4. He's ready to get his rook to c8, and he's getting things flowing here. He takes on e5 with the bishop. Now an interesting move, because if you play knight e5, rook c8 could be a nice little intermezzo. But because you took with the bishop, now rook c8 doesn't make sense. There's queen b2, so bishop takes e5. And now knight takes on e5. Rook takes on e5. And white can play knight to f3 here. So knight comes out to f3, rook d1, rook c1, pawn to e3, knight d4. These are the ways in which you could potentially play this position. But rook e7 is a nice move by Arjun. He's trying to go rook c8 and double along the c file. And knight to d4 played here by Gukesh. White still seems slightly preferable here, but Arjun looks so calm. Rook c8. And now the queen must go to d2, b2. If you go queen d2, I'm a bit worried about knight e4 move. So he goes queen b2, and now Arjun goes rook c7, trying to double on the c file and take control of it. Gukesh challenges the rooks on the c file. One can say that the opening has kind of been semi-successful for white, but the question is white even capable of pressing here? e3 played. It's a useful move, now cementing the knight on d4. So he takes, rook takes c1. And now white can take, rook takes on c1. And maybe Arjun can capture along, yes, he takes on c1. So at this point, if we take stock of the situation, white has the open c file, a well-placed knight, and a bishop that's attacking d5. This should definitely be a small edge to white. Queen c8 played. And perhaps a very good idea now is to go into this endgame and try to press here. I mean, most likely it would be a draw, but Gukesh decides to keep the queens on. And I wonder what's the logic behind it, because in a way you've yielded the c file to black, who can enter in here. h5 taking care of the back rank issues and also gaining some space here. And Gukesh plays pawn to a4. And the pawn on b3 is a bit weak, but the knight defends it. So he comes in queen to c3. Let's see how Gukesh continues. Maybe there is h3 move to kick the bishop away. Yes, he plays his pawn to h3. And then the bishop goes back to d7. Queen d1 played. And now queen to c8. Attacking the pawn on h3 here. He goes pawn to h4. Just taking care of that h3 weakness. And he plays queen to c3. Bishop comes to f3. Now attacking the h5 pawn. Things are getting a bit serious here. But Arjun comes into trade. He goes bishop to g4. And Gukesh brings his king up, king to g2. He plays pawn to g6. He also wants to bring his king up to g7. Now looking here, he goes queen c2, offering a trade of queens. I believe Arjun would be more than happy to trade queens here. Takes. And now this endgame is not that trivial, because firstly, knight is coming to b4 to put more pressure. He takes, king takes, and knight e4 instantly played. A threatening knight d2. If you go king e2, maybe he just wants to bring his king in. But Gukesh goes knight b4. Gukesh is ready for some kind of a imbalance in the position. Knight to d2 check. King moves up to f4. And he takes, knight takes b3. Knight takes d5. So he goes knight to c5 now, Arjun. Gukesh comes back, defends the pawn on a4. It's difficult to say who's better here. Black has the majority on the queen side. White has the more active king. A check here, forcing the king to come back, because otherwise the f2 pawn was hanging. And now black quickly gets his king into the game. Gukesh pushes his pawn to e4, wanting to get his king to e3. And king e7 played. King to e3. The knight comes back to c5. And now pawn to f3 played here by Gukesh. King comes up to e6. And he offers a draw. And well, this is a draw, of course, but Gukesh wants to play on. He goes g4 here. And interesting that Gukesh actually wants to continue here. f6. And Arjun is like, okay, if you want to continue, I'm happy to continue. We get another 50 minutes. Pawn takes pawn. Pawn takes pawn here. f4 played here by Gukesh. And king to d6. You can see that the h5 pawn is a bit weak, but the a4 is weak. I mean, in general, it's difficult for either side to make progress here. King comes to d4. And knight comes back to e6 with a check, attacking the f4 pawn. Gukesh has to make a comeback here. King e3 has to come back with his king. Knight goes back to c5. And now king d4. And Arjun's kind of thinking to himself, well, why did you not accept the draw offer back then? King e3. Knight c5, and this time none of them kind of offered a draw. They just looked at each other, and a draw was agreed here between the two youngsters. I would say a very, very accurate game. And there you see Pragnananda just passing by. he's having a good game against Abhimanyu, and in general Arjun is saying what could be a better way to press in the position, but somehow there wasn't particularly a great way. Perhaps the opening play could have been a bit more subtle for Gukesh. And it's always nice to see the players analyzing, trying to exchange some ideas. For Gukesh, of course, the main question is how could I have pressed better? For Arjun, I think this is a great day at the office. And there you see Hari Krishna also looking through. You actually have all the members of the Indian Olympiad team here. There's Prag here. Oh, look at Vidit also. One frame. Vidit, Hari, Prag. That's a nice one. The entire Indian Olympiad team captured in one frame in Uzbekistan, Samarkand there. And knight d2, instead of knight d2, rook d1 is what uh, Arjun suggests at a better opening idea, I believe. And Gukesh is like, yeah, maybe that is what I should have done, perhaps. You see now these openings in general are so uh, you know, there's such less scope for variability. If you don't find the way to push properly, the game could end in a draw very quickly. b3 is a normal move, but it and just discussing here about and finally a smile erupts on the face of both of them. And very cool to see both of them move on to 3 out of 4 and wishing them the best for the remaining rounds.